So this is the part where I started thinking, what the hell am I doing? These mountains look like crap. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another video. If you're new here, hello, welcome. Please subscribe if you like what I do. Today I'm gonna be doing a real-time painting tutorial because it's been requested. So we're gonna learn how to make some clouds today. There are definitely multiple ways to do this, but I'm gonna show you one way, and I have another video that's gonna come showing you another way. So let's get started. As always, all supplies are listed in the description below. I'm just starting off right now by wetting my paper, and I'm using a large brush for this. And just clean water, and you don't want it soaking wet. You just see the sheen that I'm showing you right now. That's kind of how you want your paper to look. You want to make sure that there aren't any puddles. You just want that nice sort of shiny, damp, wet paper. I'm mixing up a little indigo blue with cerulean blue right now, and this is going to be our main color. And I'm using a flat brush for this. This is not a certain kind of watercolor brush. It's just a cheap little brush that I use for acrylics. And I'm just going to start applying that onto the paper in short brush stroke motions. So I'm keeping the brush horizontal, and I'm just sort of gliding some of the paint along the wet paper. And because the paper is damp, the edges of the paint are going to blend out nicely. So the overall idea here is to sort of think of this like you're painting a negative. So we're not actually painting the clouds per se, we're painting around the clouds. That is because in watercolor, there is no white. The white is usually your paper. So we want to make sure that the white from the paper shows through in all of the spots that we want clouds to appear. I'm just taking a dry brush right now, and I'm just gonna kind of blend the edges out a little bit. The paper is still damp, so it's gonna allow that to blend a little bit more. But using a dry brush like this, it's kind of gonna give you those little like wispy ends of clouds. So this method is not for your cute, puffy little cartoon looking style clouds. This is more, I guess you can call them realistic type clouds. They're wispy and random and just sort of how it would look on a really cloudy day. So using that dry brush, I just put a little bit more water on it, and you can also blend the edges out this way, just adding a touch more water to it and dragging your brush however you want. There really is no rhyme or reason to making clouds because they are super random. Every sky that you see is, or every piece of sky I should say, there's only one sky, is gonna look different. So play with it, see what you like, and go from there. I actually find it helpful to work in different sections at a time. So now that I've kind of worked those first sections, I'm gonna go in and add some more blue sky peeking behind my invisible clouds, just using the same mixture that I used before, and using that same brush in the same sort of vertical motion as before as well. And you can add darker areas because of course the sky is not going to be just usually one solid color, especially if there's clouds. You're going to kind of notice shadows and little darker spots, lighter spots, and so forth. So with a really light hand, I'm just sort of dragging some of the paint onto the paper. Now I'm just taking a tissue and I'm blotting some of the edges. This is also called lifting, and it's going to lift some of the paint off wherever you don't want it. When the sky was totally dry, I decided that I wanted to try to make some mountains, and it just started going horribly wrong, and I really didn't like the look of it. So after painting it all, I decided I wanted to remove them, and I'll show you how I did that. So taking plain water on a brush, I'm just gonna lightly scrub that into the paper, and then I'm just gonna take a tissue and kind of use it as an eraser. I don't want to push too hard where the paper rips, so I'm just blotting it and lightly wiping. And you can do this to get rid of anything on watercolor paper. It actually works really, really well. Just again, be sure not to put too much water and scrub too hard, or you will start tearing the paper and it will start to ball up a little bit. So with the mountains completely gone, I decided to do sort of a field scene instead. So I'm taking my wash brush again, and I'm just gonna lightly put some water on that bottom section. And then I've mixed up a little bit of, what did I use? Sap green, raw umber, and I also used Hooker's dark green. And with that same flat brush, I'm just going to lightly apply that to the wet area. Just dragging it across, and I also wanted to keep some of the variation in the paint. So I did want to keep some of the brush strokes and lighter and darker areas. So you'll see in a minute what I end up doing. Again, I'm keeping that brush horizontal and just dragging it through to create different lines and sort of layers of the land, if that makes any sense. I added in a little bit of medium yellow here as well. And I'm just going to swoosh, swoosh, swoop on, splash on some color, and a little bit of lamp black at the top here to help define the edge of the land. Let me know below if you think this field turned out way better than those ugly mountains. A touch of a darker color, you can use lamp black or a brown color, burnt umber or raw umber. It's just gonna help to create a little bit of shadow and a little bit of definition in some certain areas. I'm gonna put some at the bottom here because I wanted it to be a little bit darker for what I'm gonna put in the foreground, so it'll kind of act as a little bit of a shadow. And because I did scrub the paper, you can see in this bottom area there is a little bit of balling of the paper, but once that dries, it will brush right off. The paper is still wet, and I'm just defining some edges a little bit more. And now I can add in the foreground. I'm just gonna speed through this part because you don't have to watch the entire thing. It's pretty self-explanatory and repetitive. All I'm doing is taking a number 6 round brush with a pointed tip. This is my favorite brush. And I'm taking some raw umber mixed with a little Hooker's dark green, and I'm just creating these really long, wispy pieces of grass. You want to be sure when you do this to keep a really light hand because you only want the tip of the brush to touch the paper. If you want to learn how to do this properly, check out my video, I'll put a card above, about fixing your watercolor paper and how to use the tip versus the belly of the brush. Now I've just taken a mix of Indian red and medium yellow. I kind of made a dark orange shade, and I'm just dotting on a couple little floral details to these pieces of grass just to give it a little bit more color and interest, and I really like how it turned out, honestly. I'm just adding those to the very tips of some of the pieces of grass and making them a little bit blobby in some areas, and then I'm gonna go back in with some of the darker Indian red and just add a couple dots for a little bit of shadow to some of the larger flowers. And then with a touch of the lamp black, I've just added a little bit more shadow to some of these stems. Now I'm taking the tape off, and this is what we're left with. I really hope you guys like this tutorial. I'd love to see your clouds, so tag me on Instagram if you make them. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. It really helps me out. Click the bell notification button as well so you see my latest posts, and I'll see you in the next one.